Okay, the theology of apostasy, it almost sounds like a contradiction there to put those words together. Theology of the conscious abandonment of allegiance and duty toward God. How can you have a theology about that? Well, absolutely. You see, religious people will not just come out and say, look, I'm going to abandon my duty toward God. Get used to it, God. They're not going to say that. If there's something that a religious person doesn't want to do, they're not just going to tell God, I'm not going to do that, God. No, they build a theology. And they can take scriptures out of the Bible. They can proof texts. Proof text is when you take one scripture to disprove 40 others that say something the exact opposite. They take one scripture and to prove a doctrine. To prove a doctrine, one scripture. One scripture discredits all the others, All the other scriptures that says that one scripture isn't true, that's proof texting. Okay. So, people do this all the time. So the theology of apostasy, again, let's begin by turning to 2 Peter 3 and verse 16 and look at what Peter said about Paul. Okay. He says, and also in all his epistles, Peter speaking of Paul, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood. Yes, Peter is saying that Paul is hard to be understood, that people will twist his scriptures to say something totally different. And so there's a warning here that Paul is hard to be understood. Let's continue on. Which they that are unlearned and unstable wrest or pervert, as they do also the other scriptures unto their own destruction. So the warning is that people would take Paul's writing because it's hard to be understood. Paul's writings are hard to be understood, and they would twist them, they would pervert them unto their own destruction. Okay, there's the warning right there. Okay, well let's notice what Peter said that would happen. Next verse, verse 17. He says, you therefore, beloved, seeing you know these things before, beware lest you also be led away with the error of the wicked and fall from your own steadfastness. Okay, what were these people who took Paul's writings and twisted them, perverted them? What were they doing? Well, this says, beware lest you be led away with the error of the wicked. Guess what that word wicked means? It means lawless. So let's read it the way it would actually read here with the original interpretation here. It says, beware lest you also be led away with the error of the lawless, fall from your own steadfastness. Lawless. So what is the theology of apostasy? It is lawlessness. It is a conscious abandonment of the allegiance or duty to the law of God. Yeah, that's what it is. What am I talking about? Okay, if you want to hear this type of apostate church, apostasy, all you got to do is just go to church, And you'll hear things like, well, the law's been nailed to the cross. The law's been abolished. Jesus fulfilled the law. We're not under the law. Which really means, not being under the law means you're not under the penalty of the law. In other words, when you break it, it doesn't claim your life because of God's grace. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that you're not under God's authority. What Christian would not want to place himself under God's authority? Well, I'm being silly there when I ask that question. There's a lot of Christians that don't want to place themselves under. But what about the lordship of Jesus Christ? What does that mean to you? The lordship of Jesus Christ, placing yourself under His authority. So when we talk about not being under the penalty of the law, or not being under the law, it means not being under the penalty. If you break it, it doesn't claim your life. But you're still under God's authority. And what authority does God have? You think the law might be connected to that authority. Well, obviously it is.
Is that really in the Bible? What you think is in the Bible is not.